Well, we're talking about hormones because you mentioned cortisol. Many discussions around cortisol label it negatively. I mean, because it's associated with stress. Can you explain the beneficial aspects of cortisol for your body?
Absolutely. So cortisol saves your life every single day. Okay? Cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. And so if you are ever in any position of danger, you're in microseconds, not even in a second. I mean, it takes like 100th of a second and bam, adrenaline, cortisol kind of pops up. And this gives you massive energy to either put up your dukes or run away. Okay, that is the main goal of cortisol. The problem comes when cortisol is active late at night, right? When people are doing things that activate that cortisol in the evenings. What I try to explain to everybody out there is you've got to have runway to land the plane, okay?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is sleep's not an on-off switch, okay? It's like slowly pulling your foot off the gas, slowly putting your foot on the brake. You've got to give yourself some time and some space to allow the entire body to settle down. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You're going to get in bed and you're going to be exhausted and still awake. Like the example we were talking about earlier, where let's say you're out in the garden and you're working really hard and you sneak in to get an early night's rest. What ends up happening? Well, because your circadian rhythm doesn't want you to sleep, you lie there exhausted and upset, right? You're lying, like, why aren't I sleeping, right? And you know your body is super exhausted because your circadian rhythm is off, right? And so as we educate people to understand the consistency of that wake-up time, and I know it's hard to think, gosh, me waking up in the morning is going to have a traumatic effect on me going to bed at night. But that's the science. Like, that's what we have learned over the course of many, many years to try to figure this out is you prepare best for bedtime right as you wake up in the morning.
Another hormone, melatonin. What would you say is the issue with having over-the-counter melatonin at the reach of everyone? I mean, who doesn't count with professional guidance and, you know, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about this because this is a humongous, humongous problem. Especially here in the United States, where melatonin, you can walk into any store, anywhere, and you can buy melatonin right off the shelf. So let's talk about this for a few moments because I want everybody to really understand. As you correctly identified, Niklas, melatonin is a hormone, okay? You wouldn't walk down to the local drugstore and buy testosterone or estrogen, and there's a reason why, because it's dangerous, okay? But for some reason, melatonin seems to be one of those things that in many countries is available. In the United States, you can go anywhere and get it. But for example, in many places in Europe, it's by prescription only. In Australia, you have to be of a certain age and have a prescription in order to have melatonin. Now, the question is, why? Can this stuff hurt you? What's going on here? Most people do not know this. Melatonin affects other medications that you might be taking. Melatonin affects all antidepressant medication. Melatonin affects all diabetes medication. And melatonin affects all cardiovascular or high blood pressure medication. All of it. So remember, it's a circadian pacemaker. It changes when systems turn on and off inside of your body. So if you are taking an antidepressant for depression, and then you take a pill that changes the metabolism of that antidepressant, you're going to get a different effect, right? So number one, you've got to tell your doctor if you're going to take melatonin. Here's the problem. Most doctors don't know shit about melatonin. So what you have to do is you have to do some reading and understand a few things. Here's what's interesting. 95% of people make plenty of melatonin until age 55 to 60. That's when we start to see melatonin deficiencies. There's only 3 instances where I use melatonin in my practice. Jet lag, shift work, and then in the elderly who have a melatonin deficiency. Other than that, it's really not appropriate in any way, and it's really a bad idea for children. Let me be clear. Children make 4 times the amount of melatonin that they need. You really do not need to add melatonin on top of that. Also, I want to be very clear. If you give a child a pill for sleep, they now think they need a pill for sleep.
Yeah.
Okay? Bad idea. Okay? This is a natural process. Children can sleep just fine. We don't need to give them melatonin. There is one group of children, however, where the data has shown tremendous progress with melatonin use, and that's melatonin in children with the autism spectrum disorder. So any child that's on the spectrum, whether it's Asperger's all the way to autism, we have now learned that between 3 and 4 milligrams of melatonin is an appropriate dose for those kids, sometimes as high as 6 milligrams.
Okay.
Now, if you're going to use melatonin, let's say for jet lag or for shift work, here's another problem. There was a study that was done probably about a year ago where they pulled about 30 bottles of melatonin off the shelves, and they started to look inside the capsules to see what was in them. Not a single one had the amount that was registered on the side of the bottle, either too high or too low.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So very, very graduated. We don't really know what we're getting, number one. Number two, almost all melatonin, at least in the US, is sold in an overdosage format. The appropriate dose is between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams total for an adult, okay? Total. Most of the time here in the US, we see it in 3 milligrams, 6 milligrams, 10 milligrams. So some people are taking 10 times the recommended dose. If you get weird dreams or nightmares taking melatonin, you are absolutely overdosing on melatonin. That's one of the early signs that you're using way too much. And again, you don't need it, okay?
Yep.
If you're flying from country to country, I get it, okay? If you're a shift worker where you work at night and have to sleep during the day, I get it, okay? And if you're elderly and your melatonin starts to slow down, I get it. But other than that, there really is not a need to utilize melatonin in this way for anybody. And by the way, if you just keep a consistent wake-up time, it resets your circadian clock in 30 days.
And it's not needed. Okay.
Right.
Want to learn more about sleep science? Check out Dr. Michael Breus's full interview. And if you're curious, dive into the other episodes too. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.